Welcome to the Alpha Warrior Show. We're excited to share diverse perspectives and expert insights with you. Please note that the views and information expressed by our guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of the Alpha Warrior Show, its management, or our partners. Each of our affiliates and sponsors and partnerships is a separate entity, and their opinions are their own. Today's content is provided for information and educational purposes and should not be taken as specific advice, whether it be financial, medical, or legal. While we strive to present accurate and useful information, we cannot guarantee its completeness or relevance to your specific situation. We provide all information as is and encourage you to consult with a professional advisor to address your specific individual needs. Your use of any information from this broadcast is entirely at your own risk. By listening further, you agree to identify and protect the Alpha Warrior Show and its associates from any claims or damages arising from your use of this broadcast content. Changes to this disclaimer may be made at any time and will be done effectively immediately upon posting or broadcasting. Thank you for tuning in, and we hope you find the episode both informative and thought-provoking. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to the next generation of warfare, psychological warfare. In modern conflict, the mind is a potent weapon. Discover General Michael T. Flynn's groundbreaking guide, The Citizen's Guide to Fifth Generation Warfare. Unlock tactics, strategies, and the mindset to navigate this cognitive battlefield that we all find ourselves in. Equip yourself against manipulation and emerge unscathed. Unleash your potential. Order now.
In a world of information warfare, psychological operations, who's who, what's what dimension are we in? Information warfare, you guys. It's not just a word that needs to be tossed around. You really got to have an understanding of that. And what does that look like in your individual life, aside from just saying something that sounds cool when we say psyops? So generalflynn.com/alpha. To get that book, to get those discounts. This is the Alpha Warrior Show. I am your host, Alpha. Today's conversation, you guys, this is going to be, thought-provoking, definitely, and a lot of fun. I enjoy the conversations I get to have with my guests before we hit the record button, and this was definitely one of those. Who am I talking about? Who are we going to see here in just a minute? Lee Papa. And just so you guys know, she's an avid spiritual seeker, an internationally admired speaker, trainer, coach, and author, celebrated for her expertise in mindfulness. Remember that, mindfulness, because we're definitely going to talk about it, and well-being. In 2008, Lee went through a transformation, though through an otherworldly journey known as a near-death experience. And you guys know I'm super excited to talk about this. She was gifted a peek into a realm that was more than what we call life. I hope you guys are paying attention to this. The once stressful, drama filled, and illness ridden existence gave way to a spiritual understanding of purpose of our lives and a roadmap to living mindfully. If you guys are not paying attention yet, let me say this. The last couple years have been rough on everybody. It doesn't matter how healthy you are, how fit you are. Mentally, we've all been subjected to a lot these last few years, and you're probably feeling a little heavy for that. In this conversation, I guarantee you, when you take away, you're going to be empowered with some ways to improve that and some resources that you can go and add to those tools to help improve your mind and your body. So with that, let's get to our last commercial, and we're commercial free until the end of this broadcast. America's favorite mustache, Mr. Landau, and I'll be back in 60 seconds with my guests.
I'm excited to announce we're having a huge MyPillow spring sale, and here's a few examples. Buy one of our MyPillow 2.0s, you get another MyPillow 2.0 absolutely free. Made with cooling technology, the best pillow ever just got even better. And this just in, 9 brand new colors and styles of our Percale bed sheets. They're made with the finest long staple cotton, and now you can save 50% or more. That's as low as $24.98. And for the first time this year, I'm bringing you our My Slippers and Sandals for as low as $25 a pair. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get your MyPillow 2.0s. Buy one, get one free. Percale sheets as low as $24.98. My Slippers and Sandals as low as $25 a pair. And for a limited time, when you order $75 or more, your entire order ships absolutely free.
MyPillow.com or my store. Promo code Alpha works at both of those. You saw the number on the screen. Links down in the description. If you're still old school on your phone, you got to put your finger in it and do that. Yeah, I dated myself. Those things were great. You know, back when phones had cables, we were more free than now when we have phones that are considered hands-free. Think about that. Let me bring my guest on the screen that you guys really want to hear from tonight. Lee Papa, how are you doing, ma'am?
Fantastic. Thank you for having me on, Alpha. We're gonna have some fun.
We are. I saw you chuckle when I brought up those old phones. You know, they were cool. You know,
my mom used to work for the phone company, and so we had all these different kinds of phones. And then it got very exciting when we had the touch ones, right?
Yeah, it was for those that are young watching this show. This phone, you had to put your finger in the number that corresponded with a hole, and you go, yep. And if you messed up, you'd be like, dang it, you had to push the little buttons on top and then start over.
Different lifetime ago.
You know, but you know, we weren't bound to our phones the way we are now. You know, somebody, I'm trying to remember who it was. It might have been Ivan Raiklen, General Flynn, but somebody did it was Boone Cutler. That's who it was. He had did a meme on the internet, and it was a phone, and he goes, I know why they call it a cell phone, and he had jail bars on top of it. And I was like, whoa.
That's pretty profound.
I was like, man, Lee, you've had some experiences in life that have just completely, just me listening to you before the show was just like, wow, talk about some life-changing type stuff. Where do you want to start with this? Do you prefer we start with what kind of changed it all, or you want to tell us how you got into this, how your life kind of put you to where you're at right now?
Sure. Well, I think I came into this world like we all do, with purpose, right? And my earliest memory was in the womb. And I didn't even know that was my earliest memory until a lot of inner reflection and spiritual work over the years. But I had always had this dream or this memory of this experience. And I realized later on it was being in the womb. But as I was a young person moving into my teen years, I have always been a seeker. And I would call myself, I'm a seeker, and I am a truth seeker. And I didn't really know what that meant until the last few years, right? But it's like I was setting myself up for what was to come. even when my son was young, he would always repeat when I would say, "What are we?" We're truth tellers. I'm a truth seeker. Truth has always been very important to me. And so over the years, I was born and raised in Maryland, in Baltimore, and I moved to LA. I moved to Southern California when I was 30, and changed the trajectory of my life there. I mean, you can look at your life in chapters, right? And so certain things certainly change the direction of your life. And so I had a fairly normal life. I worked in sales. I worked for the Hyatt Regency early on when I was in Baltimore. I worked for a real estate consulting company in LA. And then I got married in Los Angeles and moved to Las Vegas. But one of the things that was kind of a thread throughout my whole life was that I sought outside myself peace, happiness, really anything that was going to bring me joy, or even things that happened to me that were less than optimal. I'll go into why I kind of say it that way instead of wrong or bad. I always looked outside myself, like, oh, it's someone else's fault, or I'm a victim of that circumstance, or I want to find happiness, and that's going to be in this package, the person that I was dating or whatever, but always looking outside. And yet I was always a spiritual seeker, but I didn't really understand what it meant to go within. So I'm going to then take it to I got married in Los Angeles and moved to moved to Las Vegas, which was not a place that I really thought that I would ever live in. But the universe, God, creator, source, had other plans. And my mother was elderly at the time and living in Baltimore, and she had fallen and broken her hip, and she was on the floor for like nearly an hour trying to, crawl to the phone to call someone. And so there was some decisions made, and Mom was coming to live with us, but we were not able to bring her into the small house that we were renting in the Hollywood Hills. So we decided to move to Vegas and have her come live with us there. And anyone who takes in a parent or is, a caretaker for a parent, those details, which I go a little deeper into in the book, I think no one really knows or can prepare for what that looks like, or what that will entail when you bring somebody else into your life like that, no matter how good the intentions and how close you are to that person.
It is hard.
Yes. And my relationship with my mom was always extremely close and very special, almost unnaturally close. We were two peas in a pod, right? We looked alike, and we liked doing the same things, and we were just super close. But my siblings would describe a different relationship. I have two older sisters, described a very different relationship that I didn't understand. And so I only had my own experience to glean from. And so the dynamics of that relationship, the dynamics of what comes out when you're living with someone versus when you're just talking to them on the phone or going on trips, right? And then what also transpires when someone becomes ill, and my mom ended up with dementia, and the beginning stages of that, and I had no experience of what that looked like, and so I took all that in personally, right? And so a lot of those dynamics are detailed. But then when we moved, prior to my mom coming to live with us, we moved into just to this really great house in a great neighborhood, and Vegas, people think of Vegas and what do they think, right? The Strip, and what goes on in Vegas stays in Vegas, right? But there's suburbia in Vegas, and people really do live here. And we have normal, lovely, beautiful lives in suburbia. And So we were excited about moving into a new city that was growing, and it was a very exciting time and had such high hopes. And we got here in December, and I believe it was February. My husband at the time was in a major car accident. He was rear-ended at a light. There's the other thing about Vegas, that you have to really be careful when you're driving in Vegas, because some people go crazy, and they think it's it's a free for all, and it's okay to be drinking and driving, and or whatever else is happening there. And I'm not saying that happened in this case, but you just really have to take a beat. And he was stopped at a red light, had no place to go, and he saw in the rear view mirror that there was a truck coming and apparently wasn't stopping. So he braced himself for the impact, and he was hit and totaled the car. Side note, had a really great little convertible 325i BMW that I loved that then went to the junkyard. But the story of how that one moment changed the trajectory of all of our lives is part of the bigger story. So this once lively and fun and playful and very fit man became someone completely different, someone in chronic pain, someone who was now in the middle of a lawsuit. So you are regurgitating your pain and your disability every single day. They wanted him to journal and keep volumes, and I mean volumes, over a period of years of his disability. So what happens? What happens when you do that? You are programming yourself over and over and over again for this disability. And so I saw this once thriving person collapse into a disability, and it transformed him in not a very good way, and it was heartbreaking. And I'm my personality is a fixer, right? So, and we're similar in a lot of ways. We're both Virgos, right? And we, I research, and I'm going to find an answer, and I'm going to fix it. And so that can be a detriment as well, because we don't allow someone else to go through their own journey of healing and evolution. But I didn't know that at the time. And so by this time, then we were preparing for my mom to come live with us. And I also got pregnant, and at a ripe age of, let's see how old I was, 42 when I had my son. So, which is another interesting side note, that my mom was 42 when she had me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there are lots of really cool synchronicities, if you want to call them that.
I love that word, by the way, synchronicities.
Well, it's, it goes beyond the coincidence, right? And we've learned this over the years, like how many times can something happen that it's no longer a coincidence, right? Kind of a side note to that is that my birthday is March 19th. My mother's is, mine is September 19th. My mom's was March 19th. My son is the 9th of September, your birthday, right? 9/9. So I've got 9/19, 9/9. My mother was 3/19. My sister 6/19, right? And then my dad and my other sister were both born in August, but on 6 and 9. So 9s are a powerful number in our family, and it's just a very like, what are the chances of us all being born on the 19th? It just seemed a little odd. But anyway, I was definitely crossing my legs until my son became a Virgo. That was something that was going to happen. And so we went through this very trying time of exploring each other, having tons of contrast, lots of conflict. My mother, who we thought was going to thrive with us in Vegas, did not. She started to retreat. She would be on the phone. Like the phone was the lifeline for her in her connections with people outside of our household. And I took off time in the beginning of her transition to make sure that, she was comfortable. You don't live in a place for 40 years, right? And then think that everything is just going to be hunky dory, right? It's a challenge to move into a new environment. It's new everything, even though I couldn't believe it, but the church, we were born and raised Catholic. So my mom was Catholic. And she found a church that was the exact same name as the church that she went to in Maryland. So I thought that was, a sign, right? And I do believe in signs and in wonders of the world, very supernatural existence that we have. But the stresses of the relationship with my ex-husband, or my husband then, were growing as he was going deeper and deeper into depression and pain. And then we were hit in the middle, or the scenario was right in the middle of the financial collapse, the real estate collapse of 2008. And no one in the market really was immune to that catastrophe. And in Vegas, because we were really undervalued for so long, it became just when it was a boom prior to the collapse, it was like people were like printing money. It was just crazy. Every Tom, Dick, and Harriet, I used to joke about it, and I even think I said it in the book. Every bartender and stripper were realtors, because it was that easy to just to be in real estate and to sell houses, because it was crazy. I mean, it was so over then. Well, the bubble had to burst, and that's what happened. So we were in that equation of lots of stress and the financial collapse, my mom changing and not being happy, and my husband in the chronic pain and really seeking relief somewhere. And then, of course, then he ended up getting ill. He had double pneumonia. Then there was an addiction to pain meds, and just a lot of turmoil. And so I sought help in any way that I knew how. And I'm very holistic in my approach to healthcare, mind, body, spirit healthcare. And even from little up, we talked about that my mom did a really wonderful thing for us, where we were raised with no sugar and holistic methods of healthcare and wholeness and wellness. And although I didn't really appreciate it to the level that I do now, apple cider vinegar was very much a part of our household, and I thought it was just horrific and embarrassing at the time. But now I understand the miracles of holistic healthcare and wellness. But yeah, I mean, I could keep going, Alpha. You want me to keep going?
I'll give it right back to you, but I was listening to you kind of talk about, those tough events that unfolded. But even before that, earlier you said, I don't want to say bad things, just things that weren't so great. I think I know where you're going with that thought process, because I look back on my life, and there's been some very rough moments, and I'm like, Creator, I would have wrote that a very different way if you would have gave me the pen. But I get it, because for me to say I wish those things didn't happen, I also know the ripple effect from that also created really great things and memories that I don't ever want to have unwritten from me. So it's one of those things where I'm just like, that was just part of the cost to have that great moment there. And, I've just kind of always looked at it. I mean, I was a baby when I got sent to war, so that automatically is going to kind of change the way you look at life anyways. But, what you were going through in that kind of segment of years with the real estate market and your mom and with your ex-husband, that's what 2011 was for me. Because we start the year off with my partner dying in front of me in the line of duty, and then in the middle of the year my best friend dies unexpectedly. That literally, the man, well, there's two of them, and we're all a trio of good friends, but these are the guys that taught me how to ride motorcycles and dirt bikes, and he was just such a loving soul. And then we finished the year with my grandmother dying. And I always call her the nice grandma because I had a mean grandma who I loved as well. But this was the nice grandma. It was my mom's mom. And just, I don't know if there's ever a woman that can have the kind of love that, my grandma had. And so those three events in 1 year, aside from being a dad and, just, the general stresses of being a cop, that was a rough year. And as heartbreaking as those things are, that's what led to me getting hit with anxiety attacks and PTSD in January of 2012, which is, I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy, and, I could share the details of that another time because it would take forever. But essentially, the point I'm trying to make is, you know, I was at a point in my life where I always call it, probably one of the first major crosses that I found myself that I was going to have to carry. And it was just 9 months of I got to live my hell on earth. Am I going to lose my career? Am I going to become one of those crazy, Marines? Is this why some of my partners ended up committing suicide? Because I thought these were amazing, like the fear and stress, but it forced me, based on everything I had been through in my life, to make a decision. Are you going to curl up in a ball in the corner, or are you going to say, no, I love life too much and I need to find a way to get control of this scenario without any answers or directions and it wasn't like I could lean on anybody. Nobody I knew was going through that or experienced that was alive. And so that's where I changed my diet. I changed my workout routine. I changed how I was going to look. It was a complete overhaul that, had that not happened, I know for a fact I would not be where I am at today. And that put me on the path to become the best version of myself. Now, it breaks my heart, the lives that were lost to get me to that point, but I also know that they would have preferred me to be a happy person rather than a miserable person. And that's why, as I'm listening to you talk about that, I'm just like, of course, I don't want anybody to ever go through pain. And if we're going to talk about impasse, you guys, you know, I don't want that. But I also know that just listening to you and the way you articulate your story, that had to happen the way it happened to make you who you are now, for you to have the impact that you'll probably never even know the vast amount of people that you've impacted. There's so many people that lives are going to be changed because they read your book or heard your voice that you'll probably never even know, but yet you literally impacted someone in the world. It's just, I think sometimes the toughest warriors have to go through the strongest and hardest journeys to help others. And so with that, I'll give it back to you.
Oh, there's so much yumminess in what you just said. Thank you. Like, one of the phrases, I had to write it down, best expression of myself. I've used that so many times, in times of, even I used it before I got divorced. Like, am I the best expression of myself? Is my husband the best expression of himself in this union? And if not, then do we have the capability of being the best expression of ourselves in that? And if the answer is no, we don't, but what we did was phenomenal. We had a child, this amazing child, and we can be better expressions of ourselves separately, co-parenting, which we have, than staying in this relationship the way that it was. But there's so many things that you said that I just absolutely love and resonate with. And yeah, we don't ever really know the impact of a simple kind gesture at a grocery store can have. We are all, I believe the world is in a state of PTSD. No one has escaped it, and we are all suffering from one point or another. And I thank you for saying that, because we the work that we do, I do consider myself a warrior. It's funny that that I'm on your show, and I do want to talk about your name also, Alpha. That we have to cross the boundaries of beliefs and what is it that I want to say? We have to reach everybody where they are. That's what I want to say, right? So we're all in a state of suffering in some way, and our little bit of kindness and just seeing each other as human, as soul, is where I think it's important for us to come from, because you had yours in 2011. I had mine in 2008 and 2009, 2011, 2012, right? So I consider myself a spiritual warrior, and I believe I've had a lot of tough things happen in my life. And a lot of people don't know the full journey of every aspect of the tough journey, but I believe it's all purposeful. And I believe that you don't know that or understand or can truly understand light unless you've known darkness. And I've known serious darkness. But the light, I've also been gifted to see the extraordinary light of the other side. And I will take all that darkness to have that.
100%.
Yeah.
I don't know all the stages, but I know one of the stages of grieving is denial.
Right.
And the reason I know that the vast majority of the world is grieving right now is because the vast majority of the world right now is in denial. And what I mean by that is, when we went through COVID and the lockdowns, we were imprisoned. That was martial law, everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But we were making excuses for our abusers, which happened to be the government, World Health Organization, World Economic Forum. We were making these excuses. Well, it's because of this and it's because of that. No, our freedoms and liberties were just in an instance through fear taken from us, to where some of us, hesitantly complied. Some of us happily complied, because we're all in the pursuit of just, well, this is what has to happen to survive. And right now I still see a vast majority of the population that denies that we went through. And when I see that many people denying something, I'm like, man, we're grieving. This world's grieving.
Yes.
And until we can have honest conversations about what we went through, how are we going to get better? And it's one of the reasons I look forward to this conversation and your expertise, because I want to know about mindfulness, what it really means. I want to know what your near-death experience, what it was, and how that impacted you, and how that translates into your life now. But even with an empath, I remember as a law enforcement officer, some random person, that I met during the course of my duties, and was just, after we had, talked at length. I don't remember what the call for service she had that I was helping her with, but what I do remember from, I can't even really picture. All I remember is it was a woman, but I do remember what she said, because it wouldn't make sense to me years later when she goes, "Hey, just so you know, you're an empath." And I remember this, kind of just chuckling it, because I was like, did I just get insulted or complimented? I never heard this word before, but then I just went about my work. And then again, later on, I would have someone else tell me, "Hey, you're an empath." And then I was like, okay, there's something else that's happened in my career that happened in duality, or 2 times, however the proper term is for that. So I was like, I need to pay attention to that. This is now something that's happened 2 times. And so I started looking up empaths, and I remember thinking, what? People are crazy, because I hadn't woken up yet. Everybody's
right. You think it's kind of woo-woo or fringe, right? And you don't want to be labeled that. And
I definitely thought it was woo. So my little brother Lee, he's the quote unquote conspiracy theorist. He's loving life right now with all the "I told you so's" that he's getting to pick it open. He would send me these videos and these links, like on Instagram. I'm working trying to catch bad guys, and I'd message him, like, "Man, quit sending me this weird shit." Like, I'm working. He's just like, no, no, no. And of course, we were raised Catholic. I always say this too with my mom. We weren't just Catholic, we were Roman Catholic.
Right.
Like, you know,
Yes.
and
Yes,
so
a distinction for sure.
yeah, and he's just like, there's different color popes. I'm like, what? Man, you've lost your mind. His name's Francisco. Call him Frank. You lost your mind, bro. And I do remember when I started to go down that path. We kind of talked about it before the show. That it was just you can never unsee what you see. You can never unlearn what you're learning. In when it comes to truth, you can unlearn lies. You can't unlearn truth. And it just changed everything. And the reason I want to say that, because I know there's people that are listening right now, and the word woo woo. I have another show that I do with a buddy that we just started, and it's actually called synchronicity. And that's why when you use that, I was like, I like that word, because we have been programmed since cartoons. We're that small.
Yes.
And then we went into the educational institutions where we were programmed. We went into whatever religious institution you were in, and you were programmed. Our entire life, everything. And not only were we programmed, we were always taught that these are the authorities. So, and even respecting your elders means that these are elders, these are your authorities. Like, we were so boxed in that it's like our full potential has always been programmed to be kept from us. I mean,
Yes.
it's always been, it was going to be one of two major things. Either government was going to control you, or the religious institutions were going to control you. And should ever one of those institutions be challenged and create a vacuum, the other one was always going to be powerful enough to step into that, to maintain the ability of control over humanity. And where I'm at right now is, I always tell people, listen, I believe in my creator, my God, my source. I don't care what name you want to give them. I know there's a higher power that created me. I know that because I can feel that. I've heard that voice speak to me one critical time in my life. People call me crazy. I know it happened. Now, with that being said, I also know that I'm a logical person, Lee. I'm going to give back to you here, I promise.
No.
I'm not the sharpest tool in the tool shed, but I'm an effective tool in the tool shed. And if I tell people right now, especially during this, I call it this mass awakening, people are willing to be like, yeah, you're right, Alpha. Schools have been lying to us. Yeah, you're right, Alpha. Government's been lying to us. Document everything. They sign off on it. And then the second to tell them, but the church has been lying to you. Well, hold on, Alpha. Wait a second. And I go, no, listen to me. I'm not trying to challenge your faith. The great thing about faith is it's faith, right? Believing in something that maybe you can't see or touch. Not challenging that. What I'm saying is religious institutions are still ran by man. And unfortunately, man is corrupt. And so what I always tell people is, I personally don't believe that I need an agent or a man in the middle to have a relationship with my creator. Now, I do believe fellowship's important. And I believe that, churches and stuff serve their purpose. But I also think that we have to realize, take control of yourself, your own life. Why are we relying on these things to tell us what to believe? Why are we relying on these things telling us how to create? I mean, there's something in us, like I can feel it, Lee. There's something in us that just wants to burst, like on a global scale. But it's like they have us in this, like, this Easter egg thing. They're like, no, like, we got to keep this under control. And I feel like we're at this time, maybe the first time in humanity, who knows, because there's a lot of races that we just don't know what happened to them. But I feel like we're at this point in our humanity where, if as a global population, we can say enough is enough, that thing is going to pop. And what's in store for us is, biblical.
Yes. Yes to all that.
You got me fired up. I'm sorry, Lee.
Don't be sorry. It's fantastic. It's all that. I could speak on so many of the points that you mentioned. I love when you said, God creator, right? When I'm speaking to groups, I will say, God creator, source of divine universe, spirit, George. And people will either chuckle or be very, very offended. I'm like, God does not care what you call him, just so you call him. And I've become so aware of our life's purpose, the contrast, and this extraordinary time in history that we're in, and our purpose here at this time. You, me, all of us who are listening, and beyond those who aren't listening, we're here purposefully at this time. It is an extraordinary time in humanity's history, and it's the contrast needed to be. So when we were talking about our challenges, right, the obstacles and challenges, I have these catchphrases, if you will, that drop in, that have come to me, that are God-given, and one of them is contrast brings clarity. Contrast brings clarity, and it is our biggest teacher. How do we know that we've experienced light if we haven't known the darkness? And let me tell you, we've all experienced the darkness over the years. I don't care where you live, what political system or beliefs that you have, where you lean, what pronoun you call yourself. It doesn't matter, because we are all spiritual beings having a physical experience, and we all are connected. And so I'm going to drop in with a couple little things while it's fresh in my mind that let's just detail what mindfulness is. So mindfulness at its simplest form equals awareness. People will say, oh yeah, I'm aware. Oh yeah, I'm aware of my surroundings. I'm aware of myself. Awareness of your thoughts, your actions, and the world around you. I need a drum roll, please.
Yeah.
In non-judgment. Okay. Seriously, right? And so then the follow-up question is, who do we judge the most?
I would say ourselves.
Of course we do. Right. 100%. Everybody gets an A on that. So mindfulness equals awareness of your thoughts, your actions, the world around you, in non-judgment. But we judge ourselves the most. And we cannot expect, when I look back at that younger version of myself, I have such compassion, because she was exhausted. It was exhausting being Lee back in the day, because I looked outside myself, and I didn't love myself. I didn't understand that it's all an inside job, all of it. And everything that is going on in the external sphere of your world, in your relationships, in your jobs, in your community, anything that is coming to you is a direct reflection of what's going on inside you. And so if we're not doing the inner work, we cannot expect to have any change in the external. So you said something really profound. You made a decision. You're like, I can either go the way of my buddies or way of some of the people that you know and check out, or I can see this contrast and say, no, I'm going to take full responsibility for my life. I'm going to do an inside job, and I'm going to start exercising. I'm going to commit to myself. I'm going to have self-love and self-care. And when you focus on that, there's a free book on my website called The Roadmap to Living Mindfully, Understanding Self-Love, Self-Care, and Self-Mastery. You don't get to self-mastery unless you're doing that self-love, self-care piece. And all of us have to do this inner work for us to change the external. It's not going to be, well, it is going to be, but I'm like, when we go and vote, yeah, it's important that we go and vote for who we know for ourselves to be the right person. We all make mistakes. We've talked about that along the way, right? I know what I know to be true for myself today. And if I'm growing, if I'm spiritually expanding, that belief and that truth is going to change.
Yep.
Otherwise, I'm just atrophying. I'm atrophying, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. So I don't ever kind of say that something is wrong if you have a particular religious belief or political belief or a belief about yourself, a limiting belief about yourself. It's what's going to get you. It's the awareness. It's that contrast that's going to get you to the truth and to the healing that's going to move us beyond that. What we're going through right now is a very, very long birthing process of our new world. And it's been going on for a long time. The birthing process is painful.
One of the
But like
things,
you said, you feel like the energy is amping up, right? It's just like it's right before the birth, right before the baby, right before the beautiful, pristine shift of what's to come. But if we focus on what we don't want, that's what we're going to get. The power of the mind, and what I didn't really truly understand before, is the power of the mind, the power of your words. I use this technique called cancel clear, just to get comfortable about what you're saying to yourself and about your circumstances that is creating more of the same. When I was back in the day, pre near death experience, I would say, oh, I get sick all the time. Don't get near me. I'm going to get that. And what happened? I was sick all the time. Now I'm like, I'm never sick. I'm never sick. You said it yourself. I'm never sick. Right? Yeah. You can come near me. I'm going to love on you. It doesn't matter. I'm going to take care of you because I'm not going to get that.
yep.
Right? And I see a world that is extraordinary. I see a world awakening to the truth of who they truly are, which are these amazing, beautiful spiritual beings having this physical experience of contrast, so that we can awaken the world and move into an existence that we were meant to have. And that is all inside. I remember my mother saying, who do you pray to? And I thought it was a trick question, right? So we talked about the whole Catholic thing. And I'm like, God? And she's like, oh, you go direct. And it was so profound for me to hear her say that. She didn't feel worthy to go direct. She prayed to the Blessed Mother. She prayed to Saint Joseph, a slew of saints to intervene. I'm like, just going direct, which is really, it's not there, it's here. Going direct. And when you do hear the voice of God, there's no other voice. That Holy Spirit whisper, that loving, beautiful voice of gentle guidance, of like, just like tapping you, wake up to the power and the truth of who you really are.
So I have to interrupt you there, Lee.
Go for it, because I could keep going.
So, well, it's because of what you just said, and I've heard my creator's voice once, but it was the day that I made that decision, because I remember I had just been to the 3rd hospital, 6th ER visit in about a 5-week window, and I had went to a 3rd hospital because I was like, all these other hospitals are just, they're signing off on each other. They're just looking at the chart. Like, they don't realize it. Like, no, there's something wrong in me. Like, there's something wrong with my heart. They're crazy. They're missing it. So I told my ex-wife, take me to this hospital. And it was all in law enforcement. It was that hospital. Like, that's where you go to die. Like, it was, we were like, it's a bad one. But I was like, no, take me over there. I'm not going to tell them about anything. I'm just going to act like this is a first experience. And because of that, I went through all the lab rat stuff again, only to come to the same conclusion. They're like, no, your heart's healthy. And it sounds like you had a panic attack. And I remember just devastated, but by this time I had already seen my doctor. My doctor had prescribed a low dose of Xanax. I mean, it was just the worst, almost month and a half of my life. But anyways, I'm in the park.
Let me ask you a question. Why were you devastated? Were you devastated because anxiety felt like a weakness?
There was a couple reasons why I was devastated. One, because I was like, I don't know what's going on. And I felt like I didn't have control for the first time in my life. Only realizing that I never really did have control to begin with. Talk about, clarity through contrast. And because I know that, when I did take the Xanax, that it did work. The problem was I was a cop, I had a badge and a gun. And if I was going to rely on this, that means my career was going to be over. And I didn't want that. So it was like, I didn't want that ugly fate. I didn't want to rely on prescription medication, which we talked about. I was not raised that way. But at the same time, I was just like, I've completely lost control. What the hell's going on in my life right now, in my mind and in my body? Because now mentally, I'm jacking myself up. Physically, I'm feeling things that nobody can explain to me in a way that I understand what the heck they're saying. Because boy, do you get humbled when the creator wants to humble you. And as a cop, when I
Mhm.
would get, because we get sent to places when the fire department gets dispatched to certain things. And I would see people that were having anxiety attacks, but I'm right there with the medics. So I can see their vitals, and their vitals are fine. And I remember thinking in my head, like, get your shit together. You're fine. Like, what the hell's wrong with you? You know? And I was a very, don't get me wrong, you guys, I was a nice cop, but we
You're
live in a
alpha.
world. Yeah, we live in a world where, it's a world of control.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at these people and I'm thinking, if your vitals are fine, man, just calm down, relax. Like, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in that vortex of chaos, and you immediately remember every person you said, just calm down, get control of yourself. And I'm telling myself that I just can't. And so, and like I said, there's a lot that happened here, but on that particular morning, because we got back home probably around somewhere between 8 and 10 in the morning, it was fairly early. And I felt another anxiety attack coming on. I'm like, I can't go back to the hospital the same day I just got released. I'm like, I need to walk. And so we had a community park in the homes where I live, and I start walking. And, it was not such an alpha moment for me. There was nobody around. So, tears running down my eyes. I'm
The release.
frustrated.
Yeah.
I'm frustrated. I'm tired. I'm confused. I'm terrified. And I remember some people call it prayer. Some people call it a conversation, but I said, God, I don't know what you want from me, but I can't take this.
Surrender, my friend.
What do you want? And I heard his voice, and he goes, be a fisher of men.
Mhm.
And so me being me, I'm like, what? I'm asking you what you want, change careers, do this, do that. And you're going to hit me with the parable. Like, is that where we're going? Cause I'm Catholic, right? I'm like, you're going to tell me something that, fisher of men, I'm not no disciple, or was I?
Right.
And it was as quick as I heard it, it was gone. Even when I try to remember what it sounds like, I can't remember what it sounds like. I just remember what was said. It's hard
And
for
the
me to
feeling.
explain. And yes, and that feeling, it's very definitive. Like it's to a point where it's so interestingly that I can, like, even when I'm talking about it right now, I can feel the warmth from that morning, and I can smell the grass because they had just cut the grass.
Wow.
So I can smell the grass. I can feel the warmth, like everything. I can remember exactly everything, but I just can't replay the voice that I heard, because people always ask, well, what did it sound like? And I'm like, I don't know. Well, then, but I thought you heard. I did. What would it sound like? I don't know. I just know I heard it. It was a masculine voice. I know that because of what I felt, but it's that feeling, like what you said, that I remember. And fisherman was just not the answer that I was looking for.
Well, yeah, no, we don't go, we tend to go kicking and screaming. It's not like, oh yes, yay, I want to go out and do this. No, I've tried to remove myself from the work that I do on a couple of occasions. And God's like, no, go ahead. You want to go pout in the corner, go ahead and do that. But nothing's going to happen until you embrace your full nature and what your purpose is.
Well, at the time, and you kind of said it earlier, my truth for today, for this moment. And at the time, the part that I needed from that experience was that I know he was listening. What he meant by be a fisherman would come many years later. But at that moment, I just needed to know that what I've been taught my whole life is the most powerful being in existence. I am listened and heard me at the most critical time in my life. And just the fact that I didn't understand what he was trying to communicate to me, but I knew he was listening, that was enough to give me the empowerment to be like, I'm taking control of this situation because he's got my back. Because if he's listening, he's got my back, whether it be here or, like we know, here. and I'm getting control. And that was the beginning of recognizing that I never really was in control, but now I was going to get there. And that sent me down a long process to where now I'm here doing interviews with great people like you to help the great listeners like all of them so that we can help that Easter egg just crack and bring us to this mass awakening.
Yeah, and people are waking up in their own ways and in their own times, and you know, take what resonates and leave the rest, because it just might be a seed for later. I say it over and over again, because I even get seeds, like you said, you're going to be a fisher of men, and that didn't come until later. Well, you heard it was a seed, and then that seed needed to grow, and then it grew into this extraordinary reach that you have. And it does loop back to the mindfulness, because if we don't judge it for what it is and we allow it to unfold, being in that space of gratitude, then it will create and expand into what it's going to be. It's an exciting time. I mean, it is as much contrast as it is in the world, and as much pain as there is in the world. There is also mass awakening to leave the contrast behind. And this wouldn't have happened if we didn't have such loud contrast. I don't know if you know this, or can pinpoint a time in your life when you had a knowing. I came back from my near-death experience with an intuitive nature. So I have clairaudience, I hear, I have intuitive guidance that comes. But I also reflect back on times that I've had kind of that, what I'll call a hit or a knowing about something, but I'm like, oh, no. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. Whether it's to leave a job or to leave a relationship or to make a change or to do something proactive. And then it comes around again and it gets louder. And often this happens when it's contrast, when it's an obstacle, or if it's something that you don't want to happen, right? So something will happen around that situation where it gets louder, and then it gets louder. I just met this gal at a book signing, and she had fallen and really hurt the whole right side of her body, from her face to her hand, broke her hand, down her leg. And I'm like, oh, that's all about not the fear of moving forward. I said, so what's happening? Right? What's going on? Because it's always very intriguing to me. So what message have you gotten that you know you needed to do that you haven't moved forward on? And she was like, whoa, right? She knew she needed to move away from, I don't know if it was a job or move out of town or something like that. So she knew she got the message, but she was in fear. So she was stuck and not moving forward. So the universe will keep, and I use the universe, creator, source, the divine, will make it louder for you until you do something. And so then when the awareness comes, that aha moment and the awareness, then you're able to move forward, knowing the creator's got your back, because the creator is always vying for your highest and best, always. It may not look that way because the contrast is loud, but always vying for your highest and best. You just have to do the physical stepping forward, right? So has there ever been a time in your life where you didn't answer the call and things got louder?
More than once. I do know what you mean. And the first couple, hindsight's always 20/20.
Yes.
So when I look back, I'm like, okay, I know what that was about. But because I ignored it, round two was louder. It's gone to the point where now make sure that I'm listening, because I am a stubborn person. We talked about this, which means that because I'm stubborn, sometimes I make that contrast get very loud before I'm willing to surrender, to be like, okay, What is it you're calling me to do? Okay, that's what it is, because that's why all this has been going on. And then push forward. And the times that I've heard it, sometimes it's been for a dramatic change of a movement, and
Mhm.
sometimes it's been for a dramatic, yes, this is real, accept it. So it didn't require any change. It was just quit minimizing this, or quit saying this is something else. This is a gift. And
Awareness. So it was about awareness.
and one of those things, Lee, so from a very young age, now I can put a word to it, manifestation. I didn't understand the word, manifestation then, but I realized that when I was manifesting things, it would happen. If it was something as simple as, I want to go to the park and ride my bike, to where my dad was just like, hey, we're gonna go to the park and ride my bike, or so something where it was like, you know, I don't want to go to school today for that test. And so, my mom would be sick. And so then I wouldn't have a right to go to school. And at a young age, I kind of started to recognize it. Well, to be careful what you want, because sometimes what you want is going to result in some of these things you don't like to make that happen. So it was kind of an awareness of, hey, this thing's kind of going on. But then you kind of, as you get older, then you're just like, oh, I was just dumb things as a kid. It was a coincidence. It was this. You start explaining the supernatural, right? But then when I got into law enforcement, so I don't think I've ever shared this on my show. I think I might have shared it on a space, but I don't think I've ever shared this on my show, Lee. One of the reasons that I struggled with my partner's death, and some people may believe this, some people may not, that's okay, was his name was Jermaine Gibson, and he was just a phenomenal man. Like, he was a Marine as well. He had just gotten married. His son was just a few weeks old. I mean, you want to talk about the worst person this could have happened to. This was the worst person it could have happened to. But I remember that day we get into briefing. We were the night shift, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And we go into briefing, and I'm the senior guy. So I'm sitting in the back row, because that's where we got it when we're senior. And Gibson was still, I think he had just gone off probation, but he was still in the front, one of the newer guys. But, we're all brothers, we're friends. And I remember as I'm sitting back there, if you're ever out on the street on a hot day and you can see the heat on the pavement,
Yeah.
like the heat wave.
Hmm.
Well, I remember I'm sitting back there, and the entire front of the briefing looks like that to me.
Mm.
And I know that I'm not crazy. And inside of me, something was telling me to tell my partners, hey, we all need to be very careful today. Like, hey, let's just, let's have some fun. Let's do our thing. But let's just, I don't know, I get this weird feeling, you guys. Let's just exercise a little extra caution today. But we're cops. We're alpha men. Can't say something like that.
So you didn't say it.
And I didn't. And we would go, and we'd end up, we had a substitute sergeant that night. We call him substitute because it wasn't our normal sergeant. So, we have rules where you can only have so many units that, go to a restaurant together, because we don't want the public to see us all congregating. But, it was a substitute sergeant, so we're going to break a little rules. And so we all met to go have dinner. It was at the Bella Roma Italian restaurant. And we actually had a new guy. So
What, in LA?
Oh, no, this is in Cathedral City.
Oh, okay.
And little hole in the wall one, but great food. And it was just, we were having the perfect day. We were just having a lot of fun. And the night would go on. The reserve guy that I was training, ultimately, we would get into a pursuit. And ultimately, just a few minutes before the clock would strike midnight, our partner Jermaine would be stuck in his police car because he crashed it on a palm tree. And we would watch our partner burn alive in front of us. And we're devastated at the loss of our friend. We failed to save him. My last words to him as he's mumbling in the car, and I'm telling him, I go, Jay, we're going to get you out, I promise. And then I took off running because the pursuit had taken us into a neighboring city, and I didn't know the street. So I took off running to the intersection to look at the street sign so I could tell dispatch. Then it came back, and, we're doing what we're doing to try to get him out. And all I remember is I broke the promise to another Marine. I broke the promise to my best friend. How are we going to tell his wife, his new wife, they just got married? That matter of fact, that night we were planning the bachelor party because we hadn't thrown him a bachelor party yet. It was just a fun night, at dinner. And his son's just a few weeks old, junior. And I'm just like, Like, man, we failed in every way you can possibly fail right now. And on top of that, and this was more the next day, I started to remember what happened in that briefing and realizing you probably could have prevented this if you just would have had the courage to say something and not worry about people thinking you're being weird. And I would go on for the next few days, few weeks, few months, thinking that because I cared more about how my partners are going to look at me if I would have came out and said, "Hey, can we just be a little bit more careful tonight?" That one little phrase probably could have made us all just exercise a little bit more caution, and maybe just would have changed the outcome of that night. That's how I looked at it then,
Right.
for actually, that's how I looked at it for a very long time. And it was a guilt that was very hard to carry. But I did walk away with this. It breaks my heart that, you know, my partner had to lose his life for me to finally be concrete. But I said, if I ever feel something that needs to be said, I will never hesitate. I don't care how crazy it sounds. I will never hesitate to say something that my soul is telling me, speak up. I'll never. And since then, I never have. And that's why I say, I'll say it. People may believe it, people may like it, but I'm going to say it
Good.
because if somebody needs to hear it, I'm not going to be the one responsible for not making that person prepared if I could have armed them with some form of information. And it was just, there's so much, Lee, in my experience as a cop, that I realized that there was this internal gift that I had to know where something was going to happen to the precise location. I had our bad chief that was just like, I want him. He was just giving us, I want a gun, this and this. And I told my partner, jump the car, let's go. We drove straight, saw a car, said, stop that car. We stopped it. There was a gun, made the rest, came back, and they were like, holy smokes. And what I realized was, I'm not taking away from my work ethic, and I'm not taking away from the great training that I had from great cops, because all that played in there. But I also had a special gift that my creator gave me, that if I want to find something or know something, that I have the ability to do it. And but here's the yang to my, because yin and yang, right? Here's the
Yeah.
yang to that. I've also always had to, I don't want to call it fear, but I'll say caution, that sometimes in just normal day life, you get these ugly thoughts that come into your head. Maybe it's something happening to a friend or a family member, and so I immediately shut it down and say, nope, think positive. Think of this person being married. Think of this person being at a pool party, at a dance. Eliminate that negative thought, because we're not going to manifest that. Because I also recognize that you really can manifest these things, Alpha. So you better be careful with what you allow to be inside your mind. And so you're the expert here.
Well,
So
there's a
I'll
lot
do that
there.
for you.
There's a lot there. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot there. So, I'm just thinking about now. Was he your partner who passed, or
Yeah.
part of your team?
Well, he was. So we have these rotational. So every 6 months we change teams, but we all work for the same agency. So he was my friend and my partner. So it's.
So there are a couple things there that I'd like to share. I use a parable. That's kind of a fun, playful parable, but it helps to create the vision. So when we go to heaven, I'm going to air quote heaven, right? So when we go to heaven, it's 24-hour bliss. It's that multi-million-dollar view. Everything is just perfect. But without any contrast, we're not growing, we're not learning, right? So we've talked about that. So at some stage, you're kind of like, I think it's time to go back to earth and have an experience. I think I would like to learn something that I hadn't really previously unwrapped before. Maybe I want to learn more about forgiveness or unconditional love. And so you send out a telepathic message to your soul family, your soul group, because we do reincarnate in soul groups, meaning that you'll meet somebody and there'll be an instant connection, and then can meet somebody else and they're like a non-player character if you're into video games, right? So you understand non-player character?
NPCs.
Exactly, right. So I learned that from my son. And and that there's a deeper dive into that. That's kind of a fun conversation. But so you send out this telepathic message, meet me on, in the conference room on cloud 9. You go to the conference room, you're like, oh, okay, so I'm going to play out. This is I'm going to live. I'm going to have, several opportunities, because we do have opportunities throughout our lives to have an exit opportunity. I want to be raised in a middle-class Catholic family with, strict rules, yada, yada, yada. You're going to detail this. Who's going to be my mom? Who's going to be my dad? Who's going to be my girlfriend? Who's going to be my wife? Oh, I think I'm going to learn some forgiveness there. So I think I'm going to have a second life. And so who are going to be my children? And, I really need to learn this particular lesson about, guilt, about forgiveness, about who's going to play the role of my friend, partner, in, this particular time in my life. That I think, how should we orchestrate this so that I could really feel the feeling and understand the healing process? And then the soul says, oh, hey, how about if we orchestrate this particular scenario? And then, I don't really, I'd like to exit then anyway. So let's do this. Let's play it out this way. And so we're like, oh, okay. All right, great. We're going to all do this. Yep. We're all going to do this. Okay. Boom, we're going to go down. And then you wake up as a child with amnesia, and you have your full life, and you have these experiences and these points in your life where people show up and have these experiences. And some of them are tragic. Some of them are joyful and wonderful. And the reason why we say this is because some of the hardest relationships or the hardest circumstances in our lives are given to us by the most loving souls on the other side, who are part of our soul group. They know that you wanted to have this experience, and so they are offering up their experience in your lifetime for that. And your partner and your friend, yes, those that we leave behind are grieving, and those that are left behind have the third dimensional experience. But I will tell you that on the other side, we don't have that attachment. And we don't feel that pain. Your soul jumps out of the body. You don't feel that pain. And you just have extraordinary love for the wisdom and the knowledge that you have of the relationship, of the experience of being your friend, of being a new husband or a new wife, or being a parent. It's just love. There's no death, only life. And there's no attachment. And here we have so much attachment that we can't truly fully love at the capacity that we are capable of, because this love has a requirement, or, has to go a certain way. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. As a matter of fact, I was having a conversation with this was probably over a year ago now, with a friend, raised the same way I was, Roman Catholic. And he's just like, no, man, I can't sign off on this reincarnation stuff, man. Like, I can't. I said, let's approach it a different way. And this was just because you got to know who your listener is, and how do they need to kind of like hear a message, because we're not all the same.
Right.
And he's such a good guy too. I said, does God have the ultimate love for us? He's like, yeah. Like the way we love our little ones, like God loves us like that, is exponentially, right? He's like, yeah, so we're on board. I said, okay, so you live life, you live great, we make it to the pearly gates, open the book, your name's in there, we get to go into heaven, all right, heaven. And you're doing the experience of heaven, and you finally get to have these conversations with God, and you tell, God, I really enjoyed, that that physical life, what's it? Physical experience, spiritual experience in a physical body. I was just struggling to get that one out there. And you say, God, but I really feel like I missed out on this. Like, I didn't get a chance to do this. Can I go back and try that? You think he's going to tell you no?
Right.
Or do you think he's going to tell you, I love you, son? Yeah. See you when you get back.
Yeah. I'm always
And he
here.
was like, well, no, I don't think he would say no, but I said, well, I go, look, we're at a fork in the road here, brother. We both agree that God loves us beyond anything. And if we're telling him, I really wish I could have experienced this or this. He's trying to be like, yeah, I want you to experience it too. So see you in
And
80 years.
we have free will.
Mhm.
God gave us that free will. And I only recently, I would say over the last couple of years, listened to other people's accounts of near-death experiences. And it's always our decision to stay or go. And the whole idea of it is to gain wisdom and knowledge and bring it back.
So in the career as a cop, one, had I known that I was an empath, who knows if I would have chose that career or not, because I wanted to do it since I was a kid. But you're fortunately, I guess you could say, you're there at the moment of a lot of people's deaths. I've seen a lot of people that have passed right in front of me. And it wasn't by practice or plan. It was just intuitively that when I knew that this person is dying, there's nothing that the paramedics can do. There's nothing I can do. Or, paramedics are not even going to get here in time. There's no way I can stop this bleeding. Like, this person is going to die.
Yeah.
All I knew was intuitively to be the most peaceful, loving version of myself at that moment. So whoever this person was, that the other soul that was there with them was peaceful. I didn't want to have panic on my face. I didn't want to look like it was just, hey, I'm here with you.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine.
And it's not death. It's a transition.
Well, I know that now.
Right. But you
time,
intuitively knew to just be at peace.
Just be at peace. Just so this person, because you're the only one there with them. And, and at the time, my understanding was they're probably freaking out. They're probably, we're going to get into your death experience right now. As a matter of fact, all I knew was I just had to be peaceful and loving for this person as best as I could.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that, Lee, lay it on us.
Yes.
How did it happen?
There's so much to talk about. I love this. So as spiritual beings having a physical experience, our spirit can leave our bodies, and you will possibly hear people saying an out-of-body experience, right? So there you can have an out-of-body experience without officially, flatlining in a hospital, right? People do it all the time in meditation, or have some, a dream state. I think people do it with, how do I say this? Plant medicine, right? You understand what I mean by plant medicine? So like ayahuasca and some other plants that bring you out of your body. So my experience was, remember I said that I was in a stage where I was always sick. I had attempted to go more natural and move away from pharmaceuticals, antibiotics, because I was using them too much. And it seemed like every couple of weeks I had something. And it was just my body's way of speaking to me. The body is a tool. It is our sacred a vessel for our spirit, but it also speaks to us, and it is our tool if you learn how to listen and know what it is telling you. But I was in this stage of just really baby steps of trying to break away from that and go back to more natural approaches to wellness. But it takes a little longer until some time passes and you have done really natural approaches to wellness. And then it's a home run because you don't get sick as often and things like that. But at this stage, I was still in those baby stages of steps. And my husband was really in a dark place and was seeking ways to support himself. And he had done Vipassana meditation before. Are you familiar with this type of meditation? Uh-huh. It's also known, maybe I'm pronouncing it wrong, Vipassana or Vipassana. It's 10 days of noble silence. So no cell phones, no talking, I don't think there's even eye contact. It is just noble silence and service, basically in meditation. So 24/7, you get up very early, and the process is, as you can imagine, getting the ego out of the way and really getting to the peaceful oneness of yourself. And so he was going off to do that, and he was doing that in Colorado. So he was getting in the car and going for like 10 days. But I had been sick, and I was getting this, I had this upper respiratory illness, and he was concerned about going into noble silence with no communication for 10 days with me being so sick. And so I agreed to go to a traditional doctor and get antibiotics, which I did. And just as I was coming out of the doctor's office with the prescription in my hand, he calls and goes into the retreat center, and then that's it, no more contact. And I got my prescription and went home. But it was a very odd and weird thing that happened. It's like I couldn't, as sick as I was, I felt like I had to get the house in order. Like there was this very like the time is of the essence. I had to get these things done. And so I was getting the house clean. I put in a security system in our house, like things that were on my to-do list that I hadn't gotten done. I was just like checking off the list. And then within a couple of days, I was really down. I was out, and the antibiotics weren't working. Not to go into all the minute details that of the actual experience, but so I was in bed. My son was 2. He's nearing his birthday. It was at the end of the summer, and my mother was now sequestering herself so much that I'm hardly even seeing her. And in a time where I really needed somebody else in the house, I couldn't even whisper for help. And I found myself in this stage. I wasn't sure when the last time I had anything to drink or to eat. I was scared because I didn't know what my son was doing. And I started to feel my spirit lift out of my body. Now, I had that experience one other time previously during Reiki. Are you familiar with Reiki, energy healing?
A little bit, yes.
Okay. And so I was a complete control freak at the time. That was my mode of operation. Everything had to be controlled. Everything had to be a certain way. My lists had lists. I was extremely organized. It was just my safety. It was how I felt safe in a world that I guess I didn't feel safe in, right? So to allow my spirit to come out of my body, I had to have had that experience prior with Reiki for me to really understand what was happening. And I could feel it happening. And I was like, oh, no. There's nobody here to take care of my son. Mom will be in a panic. She won't know what to do. She won't know how to get in touch with my husband. So I had enough cognition to grab my phone, contact my friend who is my son's godmother, to come and get him because I was very ill. She came to get him. I knew he was safe. I knew everything else would be taken care of. I went back to bed, and then I let myself go. And my spirit left my body, and I went into the light, and it was an experience of the brightest and whitest of lights you can ever imagine. It is like, if you can imagine lightning strike white. I mean, there's some nice white color here, but it's just white light. And immediately I felt this freedom. Dr. Michael Beckwith talks about the feeling of taking off a tight shoe. And that's a really great expression or a visual for that, because it is a freedom of your soul who is so expanded, coming out of this restrictive vessel, and elation, pure elation and joy. And immediately I felt like finally I'm home. And then I saw these 2 light beings, by the way, no body, just a sphere of light, and no concern of not having a body. This is truly who we are. But then I saw these 2 light beings approaching me from the distance in the light. So we were all light. I was light. The space was light, and these 2 beings were light, but they were like variations of light around, so you could see the form. And these 2 beings communicated with me telepathically, and as one and then individually, and one felt like a masculine energy and one felt like feminine energy. And when they morphed into form, it was just an outline of light. One felt masculine and one felt feminine. And the communication was something like, it's not your time. You have free will. You can choose to go or, to go back or to stay. And I was all in. I'm staying. Let's go. I felt like I was in kind of like the train station or a way station before you went to the other side. Like I was just in the tweener stage. And so what I remember is that they had a job to do. It was very, I just knew it, that they were there purposefully to convince me to go back. And I also knew that it was like, these were not people that I knew from a previous life. They weren't it wasn't my relatives coming to greet me. It wasn't Jesus. It wasn't any kind of a spiritual being that I had read about, or I didn't know a light being from, I didn't understand the concept, but these light beings were there, and it felt very comfortable and loving. And so what we did is went through what I called a relationship review. So I know a lot of near-death experiencers have things called a life review, where they detail out their life, and there's usually some, feeling of whether there was, it just kind of feels like there was some judgment, not by anybody else, not by God, but by themselves, that they could have done better, right? There was none of that for me. It was a relationship review, in the way that it looked like or felt like was a person that was significant in my life would kind of come into my consciousness. I would feel the feeling of the love and appreciation of the relationship and of the soul that was known as that person. And then I would feel the wisdom and the knowledge that was gleaned from that experience. And then it would kind of wash away. And then the next one would come. And then I would feel that feeling. And they would be varying feelings, but always just expansive love. And then that would go away. And I knew that there were many, but the only two that I remembered were my husband and my son. So my husband, appreciation, love. And of course, we were in a very challenged relationship. And this was not what I was feeling on earth. I was feeling a lot of, judgment. I was feeling attachment to the way that things were rolling out. I was feeling disappointment. I was feeling all the human emotions that are in the lower rung of the emotional scale. And that's not what I was feeling in this amazing, extraordinary place. I was feeling only love and appreciation and wisdom and knowledge, and not any woulda, coulda, shoulda, or he's going to get remarried, or, none of that. And then with my son, just softer, purer, extraordinary love for the experience of being a mom, birthing this child, having the experience to mother him for the couple of years that I had. And then I was like, okay, that's great. Let's go. Now you have children. So the attachment that we have to our children, or even fur babies, right? We are attached here. We worry. We want to control. All of that is this worldly experience of contrast there. And I was there, man. And I was a hovering, one of those helicopter moms. I was definitely a helicopter mom. He's my only one. Lots of control, lots of attachment. So to have that experience of non-attachment, and just the pure bliss was one of my major takeaways. And so I was ready to go. But these beings said, not so fast. You need to really have more information before you can make this decision, because you do have free will and it is your decision. But this young soul named, and he's Luke in the book, you need to understand what losing his mother at such a young age will do to him, will feel for him. And he will not be able to fulfill his destiny if this occurs. And apparently it had occurred in previous lives for him. So with that, I had this feeling of this pain, this emotional pain that Alpha, for the first 6 months, at least, maybe a year, I couldn't tell this part of the story without bawling my eyes out. I couldn't get it out because the pain was so extraordinary. The grief, it felt like shards of glass ripping through my soul. You wouldn't wish that on anyone, not even an enemy, much less a child or your own child. So they did their job well, because I said, of course, I'll go back and I will be this beautiful soul's mother until he doesn't need me anymore. And I will do the work of the light, have my marching orders, right? But I also had a little bit of a negotiation because it's part of my personality. You do keep your personality, by the way. And I was like, so here's the deal. I'm going to do this, but when I'm ready to go, I get to go. No long drawn out illness, not, any craziness. I want to, when I say, yep, I'm ready, I want to go. Within like that, I was back in my body. And I sat up in bed and I was in a stupor. So I went from deathbed to being able to sit up, being clear, and saying, what the, I'll clean it up, heck just happened to me. And I was looking around the room, and I don't know how long this went on for, but probably a significant amount of time. And everything was beautiful and glowing and extraordinary. And I just was lost in the beauty of everything, to the point where I thought I was really losing my mind, because I was literally looking at the doorknob and the hinges on the door with such awe and appreciation of all of it. It wasn't like my room was full of flowers, right? It was like, it was a normal bedroom. Beautiful, but still, I was just in awe of all of it, and everything was just amplified and like glowing. And I'm like, I need help. And so I called my sister, and at the time, and without going into the backstory, my sisters and my relationship has always been very challenged and difficult. But in this small period of time, I had a very close connection to my one sister, and she had been studying meditation, and she had sent me the book, The Secret, during this time that she knew I was challenged. And she plays a very big role in the story because she brought a message to me in the beginning. And so I call her, and I'm like, she's a Leo, so she's full of, right. And so she's personality forward. And normally I would call and I wouldn't get a word in edgewise. And so this time I call and I say, hey, listen, I had this experience. I have to tell you about it. Complete silence. She let me go through the entire thing until I said, what do you think? And she then was very exuberant and was like, you had an exit opportunity. And then it was right. This is amazing. And that you obviously needed to bring it back and have the memory of it, because a lot of times you have an exit opportunity and don't even remember it. So she goes into this whole thing, and I'm like, okay, slow it down. I just came back from, somewhere like heaven, and I need to process. So I hung up with her, and then I called a spiritual friend of mine who was talking to me about meditation at the time. And I said, okay, I'm having this fantasy of death. I don't know what else to call it. And my sister is calling it a exit opportunity. And she said, you need to call my friend who is my spiritual mentor. She's out of Texas, and she's had near-death experiences. You need to call her. So I did. She contacted me almost immediately. And she said, textbook near-death experience. I've had 2. She said, are you feeling this way? I'm like, yes. And she said, you need to be journaling, because this feeling, this like imprint that you have on you, this residue, is beautiful and it's yummy, but it's going to slowly dissipate over a period of like 2 weeks, and then it's going to be gone. It's exactly what happened. I was seeing auras over things. I was seeing, like, if I would look at nature, it just was glowing and alive and expansive. And I would be walking down the street and felt like just I wasn't even there. But it slowly dissipated over those 2 weeks. And so I called, got my son back, and had a completely different perspective and appreciation for being a mother and this soul. And it was beautiful. And yummy is just a word that I use because that I'm a foodie, right? So it just was a yummy experience to just have him back with me. And then the next day, I woke up with just a skip in my step, and just the sun is just starting to creep up, and I was super excited just to be alive and to have this experience and appreciation for living. And I go into the bathroom, and my son was sleeping with me in the bed, and so I didn't want to turn on the light. And I was brushing my teeth, and I think I actually was in the shower. I was brushing my teeth, and I could feel like the water just running down my face. And I was like, something's not right. And I had one of those mirrors in my shower, and the sun was coming in the window right at the mirror, and I could look at my face, and half my face was paralyzed. So I started to laugh. This was not me. Let me tell you, that would have triggered me to major fear. That would have been like, catastrophic. I would have thought the worst. But coming off this near-death experience, I started to laugh. And because I knew it wasn't real. Like, it was just a symbol. And so I pointed up to God. Should have done this, but that's a new awareness. Pointed up to God. I'm like, okay, I get it, right? Like, I know I had this experience, and I know that this is contrast, and I know that it's all perfect and divine, right? Showered, got my son ready, drop him off at preschool. I drive to ER, and I'm like, can you do something about this? Right. And they're like horrified. They're thinking I'm having a stroke. Right. But I knew the Creator wouldn't give me a stroke. I just knew it. So coming back from the near-death experience, I came back with what people would call gifts, but what I know that we all have, but we need to open them back up. They've been programmed out of us. So I came back with some of those, and that intuitive knowing is one of them. And I've also, this is the side note, I've kind of like you have, I've shut down a lot of the things in certain points in my life where I'm like, nope, I don't want to be dealing with that part right now. So I'm going to shut that down. But back to the hospital. So they said it was, oh my gosh, I just lost it there. I just had a senior moment. I totally forgot the diagnosis. I'm calling it Epstein-Barr, but it's not Epstein-Barr. It's where half your face is paralyzed. It'll come back to me. Anyway, so they said you might or might not get your face back. There might be some residual paralysis. And I was like, nope, that's not going to happen. So they gave me medicine, and then I left. And I knew immediately it was a message for me to change my life, like yours was, right? That this level of stress was not healthy for me. I needed to do something else. And so I closed down my business. I called my business partner, and I'm like, hey, listen, this is happening. We're going to close down this business. She was right on it. And then I went back to Reiki, and I got some acupuncture. And within 6 weeks, my face was back with a little residual lazy eye, which tends to just droop a little bit when I'm tired, but that's it. And that's the portion of the actual near-death experience, but the residual effects of that continue on today.
As you were describing that experience, and I've talked about this a handful of times, I'll date myself here, but there's a freaking amazing, I want to say it's a late 80s, maybe early 90s movie, and it's called Defending Your Life. And it is Meryl Streep's in there, and who's the guy actor? Both phenomenal actors. But I remember my mom liked that movie, and so I'm a big movie person, and I got that from my mom, movies and music. And I remember I was like, oh, it's a pretty cool movie, but it reminds me of, it's an extended, it's a movie, so it's Hollywooded up, right? But it kind of describes that, when you die, that place you go where you're not in heaven yet. So I don't want to, I don't want to ruin the movie for people,
Okay.
but
Yeah,
in the
because I'd like
movie,
to see it.
yeah, oh, such a great movie. You trust me, especially with your experience as I'm listening, you're gonna be like, oh, I know where they got somebody who had an NDE was involved in the production of this movie. So when he gets there, it's one of those things where it's not about going to heaven or going to hell. It's about this, making it to this next level. But are you prepared to get to that next level? And they're showing aspects of his life of where it's like, to get to this next level, you have to check all the boxes, and maybe courage wasn't one, so you're going to get on the train station to go back so you can try this one more time to conquer that courage box that you need to check to make it to the next ascension. Like, a super cool movie, because there's one part of the movie where, what do they call it? I think it's called like it's called Past Lives,
Yeah.
where you go and
Plus some
it's like,
progression.
yeah, so you get to go in and they make it look like a movie thing, and you get to go and watch like all your past lives.
Right.
And so he meets this person and they're like, what's your past lives like? And they're joking about the different things. Like, he has cool stuff. He has like
And it's
really
called Defending Your Life.
defending your life.
Okay, I'm going to check it out. By the way, it's Bell's palsy. That was my diagnosis.
Oh, Bell's palsy. Okay, I know what you're
Yep.
talking about.
Well, it's interesting because I know that even though I was going to heaven, there were things for me to work out in this lifetime that I'm glad that I did come back. And I think I kind of made a mistake because I had voiced in that this was my last time. I'm like, I'm not doing this again. It's going to be my last time, right? This is for the birds. And the thing about that is that you get a lot of contrast, because that's where the lessons come from. So this is going to be my last time. I got to learn all the stuff I haven't learned in my previous lives. And one of them is fear. And I didn't realize, because I thought I'm a courageous person. I mean, like, I'm one of those people to go in first, right? I didn't think that I had fear, and yet it creeps in different ways. It shows itself, it morphs and shows itself, and then I see where it is, right? So, yeah, the past life thing, I think, for me, I know it to be true, right? Again, it's my truth. I knew it instinctively within myself. I just resonated that, yes, that felt like truth. But then I also saw different videos of young children, and they're so pristine when they're young, right? They remember things that get programmed out of them once they go to school. And like prejudice is one of those things. We don't come in with prejudice. We are pure beings, and we understand the soul connection, and then we get programmed. It gets programmed into us. It's a terrible, terrible thing. Anyway, so I forgot where I was going with that. Where was I?
Well, we're talking about the past lives, how
Oh yeah. So there are YouTubes about children that that remember their past lives to the point where you can actually follow the thread and research it and find that person in the picture, and find people even that were alive or are alive that can corroborate the story. It's I don't know how you reconcile that unless there are previous lives. Now, my son had an experience when he was really little where he had burnt himself on the stove. I was teaching him. We were making pancakes, I think. It was Thanksgiving Day. And I was teaching him, about, he was on a chair, about heat. And, this is hot. And, didn't want him to get himself burned. And again, helicopter mom, super overly protective. So I was very cautious. But what happens is he did burn himself. And he was screaming. I was mortified. I'm holding him. I was really into essential oils at the time. I got some lavender essential oils. I'm pouring lavender on him. I'm holding him. He's crying. And he said, I want my mommy. I want my mommy. I want my mommy. And I said, honey, I'm right here. I'm right here. He said, no, my other mommy. And I took a beat and I was like, oh my God, he's talking about his previous mother. And I said, honey, if I could get her for you right now, I would. And I said, but right now it's just me, right? And so we moved through that experience, but I'll never forget it, right? That he wanted his other mommy, and he actually had given me more details about this other mommy in other times, and what his life was like. Now, he would ask him now, he'll say, I made it up. But as a toddler, they don't even know to make up what that was, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm on board with the whole reincarnation thing, and I think you're right. I believe that there are levels that you reach. So yeah, what
I
else do we want to talk about? Now we talk about psychic, we can talk about energy healing, we can talk about spiritual experiences. I had this one spiritual experience when my very, very good friend transitioned. I had seen him. We were spiritual buddies. We would get together and just, jam on spiritual talk. And we had brunch. He was living in New York and he had come back to Vegas, and he's in the entertainment industry. And we had brunch and just had a really wonderful exchange. But there was something different about him in this exchange, and that he was like surrendered. Like there were dreams of things that he had wanted to do. And I think he was in his 50s. And he wanted to do like a one-man show, and he wanted to do certain things. And then he was like, yeah, no, I think that time has passed, or I don't think that that's what I want to do anymore. And he said, I'm super happy. Everything's good. He was talking about an engagement. He was getting married. And but there was something he seemed to talk about each person that was significant in his life in a very different way. Like it was just pure and beautiful and surrendered, and it felt final, but I didn't really register during the conversation. And then he said, I'm going to be here tomorrow, so maybe we can still get together tomorrow. I'll give you a call. I'm like, okay, terrific. So I had gone out for a walk, stopped off at a friend's house, and I get a phone call while I'm there. And I pick up the phone and I'm like, hey, Rick, hey, babe, that was quick, right? And it's his daughter. And she said, no, my dad's in the hospital. He he said it was an aneurysm or a stroke or something. And he's in the emergency room and he's in a coma, and can you come? And I'm like, I'll be right there. So I started to run, and then I heard him. And I felt him. And when Alpha, it's going to be hard to describe it, but he was everywhere. He was in everything, and he was everywhere. He was in the clouds. He was in the trees. He was in the air. He was beautiful and happy and dancing. He was a dancer. But in everything. And he said, I said, no, because I knew it was coming. I'm like, no, don't go. And he said, I need you to be there for my family and to tell them that I'm good, that everything's going to be fine, and that I'm good. I'm like, I'm really happy. So I got myself together and I went home, and I sometimes I'll pull oracle cards. There are certain sets that I really like, and I use them just as tools. Use tools until you don't need the tools. And the card that came, there were two cards that jumped out, and one was like a life well lived, and the other one was like I'm expanded or something like that. They were two cards that were just, of course, his messages. I went to the hospital, and this elation that was coming from me was not what is the norm of what you would have, right? When you are dealing with someone who is transitioning or someone who has passed, much less dealing with someone's family who is not on the same page. Yes, open, spiritual, but didn't have the experience that you had. And so I had to tone it down. And I said, Rick, man, you got to help me tone this down, because I can't like be all super happy moving into this emergency hospital room. And so I kind of got to an equanimous state, more of an even equanimous state. And I walked into this tiny emergency UMC room where his body was. And it was weird because there's nothing. There was no feeling of him. He was everywhere, but not there. And so the hospital was keeping him alive, his organs and everything alive. He was definitely not there in the body. His family was desperate for him to come back, and it was having hope that he would come back. And so I had a job to kind of be there with them to help with that transition. But his body was being kept alive, and that gave me a whole different understanding of when you were an organ donor and what happens with that. So I came off being an organ donor, by the way. But that's for everybody else's own personal decision and what happens. But what I saw happen during that experience led me to that decision. And then they finally let him go. I think it was a week or even longer of a stay in an emergency room. So you can imagine what that bill was. So that kind of supernatural experience that I get to have, right? I feel blessed to be able to have, reinforces what I know to be true about our experience here on the third dimensional plane, and what our real experience is, what our real life is, which is within, which is the spirit, and with a loving God, our loving creator. So yeah, that's that little story.
That ain't a little
Go
story.
on a tangent, right? Sorry.
Definitely not a little story. That is a powerful story. You know, as you were saying that, and I'm sure the listeners are experiencing this too. I'm hearing your story, but then other like life events are like, you know, popping up in my head as I'm listening to you explain this. And it's just, you know, the ability for our brain to multitask and be looking at things and feeling multiple things at one time. It's so fascinating to me. But one of the things that I was like, I want to make sure I bring that up. And I would say everybody, but I know nothing's an absolute, but I would say the majority of people at some point in our life, whether in a serious conversation or just a conversation of fun, we've asked, hey, if you can go back and tell your younger self something different, you know, what would it be? You know, don't date this person, don't buy that car, you know, whatever the case may be. And, you know, I've always said, I'll tell them to, you know, change this or change that, you know. But, you know, recently I was asked that question, and I said, I would tell them, don't sweat it. You survive everything. Enjoy the ride.
That's good.
And I remember I was so happy that was my answer, because I was just like, oh, now you're starting to get it. Now you're starting to get it, because I was like, I don't want to change anything. You know, there's been things that of course they were difficult. But for me, it's always been, you know, here's the things that hurt. Here are the things that bring us joy. And to really understand the spectrum of what true joy feels like, you have to understand what the counter of that is. So
Contrast.
yes, contrast is clarity.
Mm-hmm.
You know, yes, this really hurts, but because this hurts so much, and I know what that kind of hurt feels like, I also know what the true feeling of this kind of love feels like as well, which makes me cherish that even more, because I know what the contrast to that looks and feels like. And I'm at that point in my life where, yeah, there's some tough things going on. I'm in a battle, of course, but it's just another story for this amazing life that I get to live. And I'm just like, hey, listen, when I go up there, I'm gonna be like, man, that one was action packed. Like that one goes up, that goes in the action section right there. Like this was, this ain't one of them. This was not a boring story to say the least. Like, man, we were really trying to check a lot of boxes on that one, weren't we?
Right. Yeah, I described it as getting off of a roller coaster. It's a roller coaster ride for sure. And, and those of us who are also aware of it, can you imagine how painful it is for those who aren't?
Yeah.
Right. And let's go back to the whole judgment piece and self-judgment. You'll notice that the people that judge externally the most are the ones that judge themselves the most. And when we can get to that, when we truly understand that, embody that, then we have compassion for the people that are spewing all the judgments and the hate. And I went through this, period of time. I had to come off social media for a little while and sequester. I'm empathic and an introvert, actually. And a lot of us who are forward in our work, like speakers or trainers or, influencers, we also are introverts, and we like to squirrel away and get and that's how we fill our cup, right? But I had to do that for a while. I had to really pull away so that I could fill my cup, so that I could come back for the for the last chapter, right? For the big show. But I do find it I don't know where I was going, but what I do find it fascinating that when you are not aware of the stuff that we're talking about, that the contrast is so loud and you don't even realize it, that it must be so painful to be you when you're so locked into your beliefs and you're so locked into your fear and you're so locked into your hatred and your rage and you're so atrophied in all of that. It must be so painful to be in that space that we have to have compassion instead of pushing against people that aren't awake. We have to have the compassion, because I wasn't awake at one point and I had a different belief system, and I don't want to be judged for my belief system, but it has also made me who I am today. Right? So if we could just be a little more gentle with ourselves and a little more gentle with each other, I think it would go a long way.
It does. And I like your approach and the way you communicate it, because there are going to be people that listen to us that they're just not ready to hear this yet. And that's okay.
That's okay.
Yeah. And that's what I say. That's okay, because I was like that too.
Yeah.
But there's a seed. And at some point in your life, you're going to experience something that this conversation is going to come back up. You're going to be like, I remember this. And it's just going to soften the impact of that moment, just to put you to where you're ready. And my intentions, because I think intentions are very important.
Mm-hmm.
My intentions are just to let people know that just because we've been lied to so much doesn't mean that we don't stand a chance and that it's over. Once you recognize what's really going on and you pursue the path of true truth, I mean, I'm excited for those people. I'm excited because all these things to create distance between ourselves and our creator. Once you realize that there's funny business going on here, and you've been taking this path, and now you realize you can just go straight there. Like, I just know how amazing that's going to be for people. And I was that person, Lee. Like,
Yeah.
I was like, no, you guys are crazy. Ghost, this, no, and then how do you deny things when you experience them yourself?
When the student is ready, the teacher shows up, right?
Yes. And and so now I'm just now I'm very conscious and aware to make sure that I don't do any of those bad habits to my two little babies. One's about to be one this month, and the other one's she'll be 4 November. Interesting enough, they're both born on the 20th. One's
Oh,
June,
that's cool.
one's June 20th, and the other's November 20th. So both on the 20th.
Well, you got a Scorpio baby. Is that a
Which one's Scorpio? Which one's Scorpio?
November.
The November?
November, I think that's Scorpio. And what's the other? June?
And then June.
Gemini, right?
Yeah,
Is
I
that
think
Gemini on the 11th? I think so. Gemini and Scorpio. You're gonna have some fun.
But here's the other, amazing thing, because now, this is my career. This is my livelihood.
Yeah.
But this is also mine. I control my hours. And so, when I'm editing, and I'm not saying I don't miss being a cop. I miss being a cop. It was my whole entire life. I positioned myself to be that. But my older kids, the ones that are now adults, they had to sacrifice a lot of time with me, so yes, they had more lavish things. They got to live a more lavish lifestyle. They never had to hear the word no when they wanted something, which is in contrast to these little ones.
Right.
But they also had to sacrifice time, and they're all amazing, amazing kids or adults now. But they're always going to be my babies.
Of course. I say that to my son all the time. You're going to be 50 and you're still going to be like, sit on my lap.
and I did tell one of my older ones a while ago, but I wonder if she'll even remember. She probably would. But I'm like, you see me love your little sisters a different way, but just understand that you're a part of that. Like, you made me a dad to begin with, but on top of that, I'm older now, and life's different. I was 20, 21, when I became a dad, versus 44 now, so I was 41, 40, with Alexandria. And so life's very different, with the 20-year window and everything that you experience. But I just want her to know, it's not that I love them more, I just love them different. But you had a hand in teaching me that,
That's
so just
beautiful, conscious, and
you know
she appreciated that.
and I know with these little ones that if they tell me, they have an imaginary friend, I'm not going to be the one to be like, no, there's no such thing. I'll be like, well, then go play with them.
Right.
What's
their name?
what's their name? Whether it be imagination or real, I'm going to help expand that experience for you. And go there. And when you're aware of these things, you start to notice things. And so, and as a matter of fact, it's right in front of me. I have a baby monitor, so this way when I'm editing, I'm always, because I'm a helicopter dad, just like, and now she's like, wants to climb the couch, and I'm just like, the girl knows no fear. So, at least once a day, she makes my heart go, like, whoa, don't do that, as I get up to run, to go save her. But there's times where I'm like, who are you playing with? And I just watch. And she's chuckling, and I'm just like, whether it be an imaginary friend or a light being or whatever, she's having fun.
Fairies.
Yeah, she's having an experience and she's having fun. I could be the one to take that from her.
Right.
Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, I want those again.
Right. She's a sovereign little being, and she's having having an experience, and that's what I had to also come to learn is the attachment that we have here and the control, because that comes from fear. Everything is either love-based or fear-based, right? And we think that we're loving, we're we worry because we love. No, it's fear. We worry because we're fearful. And my mother, I grew up with my mom, the phone would ring when somebody wasn't home and she'd be blessing herself, right? Or call, she's like, is everything okay? Right? I mean, everything was always towards the negative. And I didn't want that pattern, that program to perpetuate with my son. And I didn't really come to it until he was a little older. And it's really the early years that's the most important, 0 in the womb to 7 years old. I understand your brain is in theta state. So theta is hypnosis. So your little one is getting hypnotized by everything that they see, hear, the television, the exchange between the parents, the family members, everything. Your exchange with, at the grocery store, they're taking in everything, just being hypnotized by everything. So can you reprogram yourself? Absolutely, you can. You can do it also through hypnosis. You can do it with coaching and making small changes every day, like you did to transform yourself, and I've done to transform myself.
I'm still learning, and I can't wait to read your
We
book.
all are. I hope we continue to learn always.
So, but one of the things that I want to do was I wanted to make sure that I set up these two little people for the best opportunity for success. So while they were in the womb, headphones with classical music, like everything, making sure that, they get sunlight, take her to the backyard, go check the mail, just make sure, but it's, to play that good music, to play those good frequencies, especially, and for the people that are like, wow, I don't believe, well, then just look from the science portion of things. And, how much of our body's made up of water. And I forget there's two main people that went into this, but one of the scientists, we're talking about the frequency of water and the memory that's in water, and how you can make, part of the water that has like a very symmetrical shape, with good and positive music. And then there's the water where the crystals look dirty, and they're
talking about hidden messages in water. Dr. Emoto. I'm trying to find the book. I know I have it here somewhere.
Dr. Emoto.
Dr. Emoto. It was one of my biggest ahas, because we are made up of mostly water, and we're programming that water with our thoughts. So what I say is, you're either poisoning yourself with your thoughts and your words, or you're nourishing yourself. And it's not even just yourself, it's others. So you have to choose your words wisely. But until you get that, until you embody that, it's just kind of, oh, well, that's hocus pocus or whatever. But that's science. It's all very grounded information. I joke about the woo-woo because I owned a wellness center here in Vegas for 6 years. It was 6,000 square feet. It was amazing. We did all kinds of great supplemental, healthcare, and we did yoga and meditation and gongs and sound healing and Reiki and all kinds of really great stuff. But I was like, this was not going to be a woo-woo place. This is not going to be like, it's not going to be beads and, chanting. I would joke about that. I'm a very grounded person, and I come from a business background, and I'm like, I'm not like the hugger, well, I am the hugger. That's what happens. You become the hugger. But I don't do yoga. People still think I'm a vegan and I do yoga. I'm like, no, it doesn't happen. Neither.
One of the things that me and my buddies say when we do the synchronicity show is we tell people, hey, look, especially for, America First MAGA people, like they'll definitely get it. But we say, make woo great again.
There you go. There you go.
So we tell, because it is true. And the only thing that can happen if you, I always tell people, at least entertain it, because all it's going to do is just give you a more happy, balanced life. There's nothing negative that comes from it. Like with my little girl, because I understand we're water, and I understand, well, a large portion of us is water. And because words have impact on that, sounds, music have impact on that. I tell my little girl multiple times a day, you're so beautiful. You're daddy's princess. You're so pretty. Oh, look at daddy loves your ears. Look how pretty your eyes are. There's not one day that has passed in her little life where she probably hasn't had between 10 and 15 times, if not more, daddy telling her that she's pretty, that her hair smells beautiful, that her eyes are shiny. Oh, you're daddy's princess. Because I want to fill her body and her soul and her light with that. So that way she just carries it on. And if people are like, well, I don't believe in that woo-woo, then let's just say all of it is fake. At the minimum, I've established the base for her on how a man should treat her. At a minimum.
And also adding to that, look at how kind you are. Look at how compassionate you are. So start programming the things that you want, that we would want our children to be, right? Look how giving you are. Look how you light up. So we want her to know that she's more than just her body, right? She's more than just her physical body. She's spirit. And that spirit is kind and loving and generous and extraordinary and yummy, right? And look at how, just by your kindness, look how that impacted that little boy. You know what I'm saying? So just expanding her awareness and honoring the light that she is. Yeah, she's having a physical experience, but it's the light that she is that's the most important.
It's great.
Oh,
I know we've taken it long, but I do want to cover something before we wrap it up.
yeah.
I want to make sure, because I wish when I first heard this word that I would have really understood it, and it's that word empath.
Hmm.
So for people that have probably heard it but don't really know what it means, because it's been incorporated really in a lot of the conversation we've had. But what is empath for those people that have, like, I've heard that before, but I don't know what that is.
So I'm going to give you, oops, something just happened. I'm going to give you my personal definition or experience. So it's people that are sensitive, and not like, oh, you're too sensitive, but that you feel. And I'm going to give you an example, like someone who meets someone and all of a sudden their emotions are sad. You know nothing about that person, but all of a sudden you feel a sadness. And what they're feeling is that the person that they just met is grieving. You walk into a room full of people, and the level of energy that is emanating from all of these people feels like you've got little darts coming at you. You are this magnet kind of emotion that is coming at you that is not yours, and you feel it viscerally. The thing is that you can take, just like, we're in a duality existence, right? We're in a this reality is about duality, right? Right, wrong, light, black, right, dark. So when you look at empaths, we always have two ways to experience it. We can either lean in. Oh, this is a good lesson in mindfulness. So you can either lean in and be the participant in the contrast that it's providing you, because it can be uncomfortable, and a lot of empaths end up secluding themselves and never going out, right? Because they can't handle the energy of other people. Or you can empower yourself and lean out and be the mindful observer of it and use it as the tool that it's meant to be. So you have full control over your abilities, whether it's psychic or being an empath, whether it's healing, right? Just like when I had the wellness center and I was doing psychic work and intuitive work and healing work nonstop every single day. I was so wide open and it was coming all the time. I don't want to go to the grocery store and know that that person's cheating on that person. I don't want to know that. Right? It's like there's a responsibility in that. That's for their experience, and it's not my responsibility to tell anybody anything. So that particular situation, that's when I'm like, I'm going to shut this down. I'm going to let it go dormant. And I directed it. I only want it when I'm working with someone on their spiritual development through coaching or through grief or through their healing or whatever. That's when I want it. Okay. So the empathic thing that has a whole nother layer, which a friend of mine does coaching with empaths and people moving out of narcissistic relationships, which is a very interesting dovetail. We had this great conversation yesterday. Because when you're an empath, you attract these relationships that are often really toxic and narcissistic. Someone else described it to me as like being a bug light. You're a bug light and everything's attracted to you, even the stuff you don't want, right? So yeah, but it's a gift. And I wouldn't change the feeling of feeling someone else and being compassionate when it's on my terms. Again, I did this book signing the other day, and a woman came up, and I could feel the emotion, and so close to the surface that I couldn't talk to her about my book. You know, like she's holding the book. I couldn't like just talk to her about the near-death experience. I'm like, I got to talk to you about what's going on with you. Right. And so we ended up having this amazing, like 15, 20-minute conversation about how she had just gone through this tragic event in her health, and she was hospitalized and almost died. And everything was so close for 3 years. Now, we wouldn't have been able to have this exchange and have a little bit of healing that went through if I wouldn't have been able to feel her. So now in your circumstance, you didn't even know what to call it, but you just intuitively knew that you needed to hold that person's hand and help them transition. You intuitively knew that someone needed your compassion. So, and you probably felt just the draw of it. So we can channel it to its positive, or we can let it take hold of us to the less than optimal.
It's very interesting that you say that, Lee, because I've talked about that with the people in some spaces that are much more experienced in understanding this than I am. But I told them one of the interesting things that I recognized at that moment of death for people, like I said, it's unfortunately, part of that job, but also say fortunately, because it helps you gain insight and experience. Because I was in a situation most people don't experience. Most people aren't around when a lot of people die. You would, maybe doctors and nurses, firefighters, but being there and what the interesting thing is what I'm about to explain, it didn't always kind of correlate with what they look like. Like, just because a person was a gang member, or just because this person looked like a soccer mom, I never noticed that there was no consistency in what I witnessed that had to do with the way people looked, right? That prejudice that we have.
Right.
But, and fortunately, majority of the time it was a good thing. But at that moment, I would either see and sense a very just relaxed, peaceful, like feeling, like I could feel it because I'm very, empath. Or there were some situations where I could just sense the sheer terror. And of course, that one leaves you very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because then you start wondering, what the heck did they see or feel that created that? And all I knew coming away from that was, I want to feel that one when my moment
Yes,
comes.
sir.
But what I'm trying to say is, sometimes I saw gang members very peaceful, and sometimes I saw the soccer mom that looked very terrified. So it didn't always match what people look like. It was something that you could tell it just had to do with that specific person, And like I said, sometimes there were some gang members that I saw look very terrified, and sometimes there were some soccer moms that looked very peaceful.
Did you ever see the movie What Dreams May Come? Speaking of movies,
have. Well, with Robin Williams. It's been a very long time, man. That's an old movie.
An old movie, but it was again one of those aha moments where, and I'm going to loop that back to when I was writing the book. In Three Rivers, I was at the coffee shop, and I had a gal come up to me and kind of was surreal. Are you Lee Papa? I was like, why does anybody know that I'm here or that would care? And she said, I hear you're writing a book about your near-death experience. And I said, yes, I am. And she said, well, my husband had a near-death experience. Can I tell you about it? And I'm like, absolutely. So she told me she's very Christian. He saw Jesus, angels. It was, their belief system. And she said, I'm so glad we were right. And I thought, and I'm like, I'm so happy for you that you had that experience. That was really profound, really great. So she left, but it got me thinking. And I was like, well, when you have a near-death experience, when you are empathic, when you get a psychic or you have a supernatural experience, there's nobody that's going to tell you otherwise that it didn't happen, because it's that profound for you. So I'm like, okay, that's all right. But I was like, well, what if? This is where I like to stretch, right? I don't want to be so locked into my beliefs that I don't do a what if. What if we're all right? What if it's what we believe is what we experience? Now, I didn't believe particularly in light beings, so I'm like, I didn't like have that in my unconscious or a program, because I didn't know what light being was until I saw it. But I was born and raised Catholic, and I believe in Jesus, and he's my bud. I love him. And but Jesus and I didn't talk. But I will tell you, it was the most unbelievable love and yumminess of love and non-judgment that I have ever experienced. So that kind of takes me to that movie, is like, she went to a place that you would consider hell, right? Your person that had that experience when they were passing, you might say they went to hell, but was it their own guilt, their own shame that they could not resolve through God, through Jesus, that brought them to that space of a negative experience? Maybe.
And at a minimum, what those experiences that I got to witness firsthand, like I was there, at a minimum, what I knew is that moment when you take your last breath, it is not the end.
Right.
Like the one takeaway was, it is, and I like what it would, that is a transition. That moment is a transition. And that's why I think you're right, to have that life where you're happy and the energy and there's positivity. It doesn't mean that, you don't experience real world problems.
Right.
It just means they don't control you the way they used to.
Well, it's a movie.
Yeah.
More and more as I get older and more expanded in my spiritual understanding, that I don't get triggered as much. I mean, tiny triggers, but I don't get triggered. And I see it for what it is, right? The non-player characters, I see it for the movie playing out. I see it that everybody is just a character in a play. But the most important thing is my inner journey. And actually, what I'd love to be able to do is, there's a section in the book that has been what people would call channeled. I say divine guidance, from God, creator, source of divine. You can call him Joseph, you can call him whatever. But it's a really beautiful talk about what our existence is about. Would you be okay with me reading that?
Absolutely. And let me bring it up so people can see which book we're talking about here.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you. I have to get my spectacles on.
and for those that have been listening and not watching, scrolling across the screen is all the links you need to find Lee, to purchase this book, to get more information, to really get tapped into all this. But don't worry, you don't have to pull over. I always do you guys a solid. In the description is all the links. You don't even have to type it. All you got to do is click it and it will take you there.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so this is what I received. Love enters us from a well of existence that is streaming from the natural source. We do not own it. It flows freely and is given with no requirement or judgment of its use. It is the life force of all creation. I am here to tell you that this life force runs through each and every one of you and each and every one of all living beings in the cosmos. If you could glimpse for just one moment the purity of the light of all existence, the same moment that we allowed Lee to experience and to draw upon for her strength in her journey as she continues to expand into the being that she already is, it would most definitely change you. The worry and the fear that penetrates every layer of your current existence would vanish like a streak of lightning in the night sky. It would melt all the worry and the darkness from your hearts and fill you with the light of love for all mankind. There would be no differences, no wars to fight, no burdens of finance, as with this love, all things for all people are possible. Your limiting knowing of what the light is the only problem or issue that you need to resolve. The only issue. As once this clarity is yours, you will no longer seek anything but the essence that is the light of pure energy. You see, this strength that is the you that you do not know is just below the surface to be uncovered by you. This is the journey you see. It is the unveiling of the shell that you have encrusted upon yourself in darkness so that you can see again. The world is your playground, your playhouse, and your school. It is that for each and every one of you. Some of you see now, and some of you are beginning to see. It is a joyous occasion for all of those who are able to see this unfold. It is glorious in many ways, as your existence is unfolding in the hands of those who seek. You are the beauty and the life of all beings and all people, and the sages of the old ways will no longer be the ones that those follow, as the followers will be only you in your own path of seeking. This is true for all. Do not seek to find what is already within you. The path to the enlightened is with you.
That is so awesome. Overnight that to me, Lee. I am pumped. You guys, you want more of that book, links down in the description. Lee, this has been an awesome conversation. I can't wait to have you back because there's just so much more that I want to talk about. I know the audience is going to be like, ask her this and ask her that. So there's no doubt in my mind that we'll have you back. I will give it to you for your last words to the audience before we say goodnight.
Be gentle with yourselves. No judgment, no death, only life and only love.
Absolutely love that. You guys, Lee Papa, this is the Alpha Warrior Show. We run the show commercial free. So do me a favor, stick around, support the people, support this show. And I'll catch you guys on the next time. Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Semper Fi, guys. First in, last out.
Are you worried about the effects that higher inflation rates will have on your investments? Are you trying to secure your retirement savings against losses, but you notice that inflation is a hot topic these days? But how dangerous are low inflation rates on your retirement savings? An inflation rate of 2% may not seem like much, but it means that prices will just about quintuple over the lifetime of the average American. And 4% average inflation rate means that something that costs $1 when they're born will cost $23 when they die. That demonstrates the danger of even low inflation rates. So when it comes to gold and inflation rates, many investors want to know whether inflation rates have an effect on gold prices. What history indicates is that over the long term, increased inflation should lead to correspondingly higher gold prices. From September 1971 to August 2020, gold grew 7.5 times as much as inflation. Not only can an investment in physical gold help protect your assets against the damage done by inflation, it can also help grow the value of your retirement portfolio over the long term. If you're looking to protect your retirement assets, why wait until stock markets crash and gold begins to rise in price?
Have you ever wondered what it's like to be a January 6th political prisoner rotting away in horrible conditions? January 6th patriots are subject to cruel and unusual punishment every day and kept imprisoned for nearly 3 years without trial. These American heroes have to survive inhumane conditions where they lack basic food nutrients, clothing, and hygiene. Joe Biden's corrupt Department of Justice and FBI Gestapo has been making sure the families of these brave patriots are suffering as well. The breadwinner has been ripped out of the home, and these young families are being extorted thousands of dollars a year to keep up with commissary costs for their J6 prisoner. Many families have been completely devastated, missed mortgage payments and kicked out of their homes, and even the family car repossessed. The ongoing battle these families face to stay afloat and support their loved ones in prison is in desperate need of our help. You can now sponsor a January 6th family to help support them in their greatest time of need. SponsorJ6.com is a new organization started by January 6th political prisoner for 965 days, Jake Lang, ensuring 100% of funds made go to Patriots commissary accounts. By becoming a sponsor of a J6 family, you can ensure one of the nearly 200 currently incarcerated J6 prisoners is properly clothed and fed. Sign up today to give the vital help these families need and make a real impact in the lives of our POWs. Head to SponsorJ6.com and support our Patriots.